Hello and welcome. This is Kevin Grubb from gamingculture.org, a site dedicated to asking a simple question with complex answers. How are video games a reflection of society? Normally I write essays and draw webcomics to make some commentary on games. You know, pretentious stuff a la New Yorker. Occasionally, however, I like to do short video pieces about gaming and my own recommendations. 2011 has been an amazing year for games, and I normally love waiting for game sites to prepare their own Game of the Year articles and videos. This is the first year I've had my own venue to share, so let me present to you gamingculture.org's top 10 games of 2011. Let's start with number 10, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Let me say immediately that I know this game was released late in 2010, but its PC release was in February of 2011, so I'm going to include it here. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood continues the story of Ezio Auditore from Assassin's Creed 2, as we explore Rome and continue to unfold the story of the age-old feud between the Templars and the Assassins. The gameplay improvements to Assassin's Creed 2 have returned with some new enhancements to combat and the addition of the Brotherhood, a group of assassins at your beck and call. Holding down a trigger to have a squad of white-cloaked assassins dispatch a group of enemy guards is as fun as it is satisfying. I have very little bad to say about Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The fact that I rate 9 games higher this year is just an indication of the strength of the field. Moving on to number 9, Driver, San Francisco. When I was younger, my mother bought me a copy of Bullet, starring Steve McQueen and featuring one of Hollywood's greatest car chases of all time. Around the same time, I played the original Driver game, which captured the white-knuckle excitement of blasting around San Francisco, dodging cops, and busting bad guys. Sadly, the Driver series went off the rails for a few iterations. By letting the player character out of the driver's seat, the Driver series aimed to overtake the GTA series, an impossible task that ignored Driver's strengths, namely, driving. Driver San Francisco returns to its roots with a fun and satisfying driving game with a silly but enjoyable story and innovative mechanics. Want to drive another car? Thankfully, since our protagonist is in a coma and doesn't realize it, we can merely shift to other cars at will, allowing the player to use other cars to go faster and to use them to ram into opponents. Like I said, silly but enjoyable. With a whole host of side missions to play through, great voice acting, and a story that reminds me of action movies from the 90s, Driver San Francisco also certainly deserves the title of Underrated Game of 2011, and a spot as number 9 on my list of the best games of 2011. Number 8, Bulletstorm. Sometimes I don't play games when they come out, especially when they have stupid names and generic art on the cover. Sometimes I'm an idiot. I only bought Bulletstorm recently as it was on sale on Steam, and immediately as I started to play it, I realized I should have played it earlier. Set in a fantastic sci-fi universe with over-the-top protagonists, antagonists, and minor supporting characters, Bulletstorm rewards players for playing creatively. Its motto, Kill with Skill, reflects a system of shooting where the player receives points for playing in a certain way. You use these points to buy ammo and upgrades for absurdly powerful weapons. Here's the deal. Kill an enemy with a shot to the chest? That's about 10 points. Set an enemy on fire and kick him into a cactus? Probably 150 points. The real reason I like this game so much is the exceptional dialogue and over-the-top characters. I laughed out loud a couple of times playing this game, and may add some of the protagonist's own colorful expressions to my own lexicon. You know, for those times when you're slaughtering aliens and trying to make your cyborg friend laugh so he doesn't turn into a full robot and kill you. Like any Tuesday, really. Let's stay in science fiction for number 7, Dead Space 2. The original Dead Space was a surprise hit. A survival horror game set aboard a derelict mining ship sounded like a cool idea, but difficult to pull off. Yet created a stunning modern masterpiece that belongs alongside classic space horror pieces like the movie Alien. Its sequel took the original formula and added to it, following the story of Isaac Clarke, a combination of Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, by the way, and his exploits in space. Dead Space 2 took a decidedly more psychological approach, introducing Isaac's descent into madness into the game, compounding the tense atmosphere of the gameplay. Speaking of tense, you know what's scary? Monster babies are terrifying. Dead Space 2 created a brilliant environment and some memorable moments. For fans of science fiction, Dead Space 2 is a must-play. Number 6. Battlefield 3. It seems like military shooters are a dime a dozen these days, with hordes of teenage boys flocking to such titles with frenzied zeal. What does it take for a military shooter to make my top 10 list? Insanity. Join any server running Battlefield 3, and you'll see what I need in a military shooter. In a typical match, you'll see helicopters transporting soldiers and strafing enemy positions. You will see tanks and APCs angling about the battlefield, firing massive cannons and rattling machine gun rounds into the distance. You will see snipers climbing to vantage points, engineers preparing rockets, medics reviving comrades, and support specialists laying down heavy fire. What's more impressive, all of these people are human players. On the PC, you can play with 63 other people. Couple this with many people on well-made and destructible maps, and incredible sound design, and you have a recipe for success. The single-player campaign had its moments as well, with a couple of pretty interesting scenes involving fighter jets, tanks, and special operations missions. It's all the fun parts of war, without the PTSD, which makes Battlefield 3 number 6 on my top 10 games of 2011. Remember when GTA was about being crazy and doing crazy things with crazy weapons while driving crazy vehicles and wearing crazy clothes? Saints Row does. Saints Row the Third is the culmination of a series driven increasingly by the questions asked by 13-year-old boys. What if a sex toy was used as a baseball bat? What if you could drive a moon buggy around Pittsburgh? What if you were a 300-pound guy with yellow skin and a mohawk? What if indeed? Saints Row the Third is actually a masterpiece of a game, one that in one of gaming culture's essays I argue is an excellent example of satire done correctly in games. The plot is funny and outlandish, as are the characters, weapons, vehicles, and dialogue. By throwing out the pretense of games trying to be art, Volition has produced an exceptional game that only comes around once or twice a console cycle. Some would say they are smart enough to see how dumb it is, but I think they're too dumb to see how smart it is. Did I mention this game is crazy? Speaking of humor in games, let's move on to number 4, Portal 2. Portal is perhaps one of the most difficult games to follow up on. Included in Valve's Orange Box with mega hits like Team Fortress 2 and Half-Life 2, the original Portal game was a surprise masterpiece. Short, poignant, and humorous. With unique gameplay and an interesting and mysterious world, Portal demanded a sequel from millions of fans. Thankfully, the sequel was in good hands. There are probably only 2 video game developers out there who can take great games and build on them to satisfy their fans, Blizzard and Valve. Releasing Portal 2 on the back of a complex and exquisite augmented reality game, Valve produced the sequel everybody wanted. Using the gameplay mechanics from the original, adding new ones, and putting a spotlight on characters like GLaDOS and other newcomers, Portal 2 was a joy to play. The only downside? It was over too quickly, and I was sad when I beat the game. Let's just say I'm sure there will be a spot on a future Game of the Year list for Portal 3. Number 3, Red Orchestra 2, Heroes of Stalingrad. I want to describe something that happened when I played Red Orchestra 2. I was playing for the Soviet Red Army team, and our objective was to storm a set of bridges and capture control zones near the apartment blocks. I rushed to the bridge on the left, narrowly avoiding German sniper fire coming from around one of the tall apartment blocks near the right bridge. I ducked around a wall to the control zone, carefully bypassing a door through which German infantry might follow, and noticed that my team had failed to place smoke to cover their advance into the control zone on the right. As they were gunned down by ruthless machine gun fire, I saw a German soldier pop his head out of the cellar, trying to get a clear shot at the remaining Soviet soldiers scrambling for cover. I aimed my rifle and quickly dispatched him with a single headshot. I ran into the cellar from which he had emerged, bypassing the control zone and running into the propaganda office. I ran upstairs, praying that the Germans would be focused on the front line. As I stealthily took a position above the German position, I came to a window overlooking the German reinforcements and opened fire. After 5 seconds, my position was being fired upon by 3 different German soldiers. 2 seconds later, a pair of grenades bounced into the room where I was hiding. I fled the room only to meet the business end of a German bayonet, waiting for me as I was exiting the room. Red Orchestra 2 is one of the most visceral, realistic, and enjoyable multiplayer experiences on the market today. I highly recommend it, and it definitely deserves its spot as number 3 on my list. Number 2, The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. I think I put nearly 200 hours into The Elder Scrolls IV, Oblivion. Even now, when I go back and play that game, I still find hidden quests, rare items, and interesting stories. I knew with the announcement of its sequel, Skyrim, Bethesda would have a difficult task in producing something to match the wonder produced by emerging into a wide open world and forging your own path through quests, dungeons, and item management. Skyrim exceeded all of my expectations. Bethesda succeeded in creating a world that is both beautiful and gripping. I would have never thought that a frozen wasteland could be so gorgeous and diverse, and yet I spent the majority of my time in this game simply wandering around from location to location in search of minor tidbits. It awakened in me a sense of wonder that I believe long lost to childhood. Skyrim is certainly not without its flaws. It is a little bit buggy, and some of the quests are a little tiresome, but there are few games I set aside entire weekends just to play. Skyrim was one of them, and I'm itching to play more Skyrim just by talking about it. Skyrim's spot at number 2 on my list is certainly well deserved. Before I talk about my number 1 game of the year for 2011, let me just mention a few of the titles that did not reach my top 10 list, but were awesome in their own ways nevertheless. From Dust, Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet, Deus Ex Human Revolution, Tropico 4, Forza 4, Dead Island, Okamiden, Dirt 3, Batman Arkham City, Red Faction Armageddon, Ms. Splosion Man, GoldenEye, Anno 2070, Sims Pets, Rage, and a ton of other games that came out in the past couple of years that I have only just gotten around to playing this year. 2011 has been an awesome year for gaming, and I think we can all agree on that fact, even if you don't agree with my entire list. This brings us to number 1. My number 1 game for 2011 is The Witcher 2. The Witcher is an amazing game for a number of reasons. First, it was built solely for a PC audience, which given its lack of prominence compared to console and mobile gaming, is an amazing feat. The Witcher 2 is simply one of the most beautiful games I have ever played, and it takes full advantage of the PC's strong points, namely graphics technology. The Witcher also has an adult story with genuinely morally ambiguous choices that makes you care about the characters in the game. Sex and violence are handled in a remarkably mature way, not just relative to other games, but relative to cinema and literature as well. The main character, Geralt, is a pitiable character, who, although more powerful than a lot of creatures and men, is still mortal, and therefore acts mortal. The initial release of The Witcher 2 was a little rough, given its lack of a full tutorial system, making early combat encounters extremely difficult. The combat system itself, however, is actually quite deep and engaging, forcing you to think before you enter combat. Once you learn its quirk, each battle becomes a meaningful experience, with even tiny minions putting up a reasonable fight. The world of The Witcher is perhaps not the best known when compared to other fantasy settings, but after spending a few hours engaging in dialogue with other characters, and just looking at the beautiful scenery, I felt like I knew more about where The Witcher takes place than I did about Middle-earth or even Skyrim. The Witcher 2 is a rare example of a game made specifically for an adult audience, with a great story, fantastic characters, and a beautiful environment. It's not a perfect game, but I may never have an experience like The Witcher 2 again, so it is without a doubt my number 1 game for 2011. I hope you enjoyed this video feature from gamingculture.org. Please visit my site for an accompanying essay with this video. Please feel free to leave a comment, and I hope you had a great year in gaming as well. Here's to 2012. This has been Kevin Grubb from gamingculture.org asking you, how do games reflect society?